Okay, well, welcome, and if you haven't finished lunch, please continue eating, please. Hannah Rodriguez is the president of the Carroll County Foster Parent Association, manager of Alice's House, and foster parent of 6 years. She and her husband focus on accepting foster placements with high support needs who are at risk of institutionalized care. In addition to her 3 young biological children, Hannah and Aaron currently parent 5 boys, ages 10 to 17, and are finalizing the adoption of their 17-year-old son soon. Hannah is experienced in parenting children with exceptionally challenging behaviors, medical, developmental, and intellectual disabilities, and severe mental health needs. Please welcome Hannah Rodriguez.
Is this on? Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you should punch the button.
Hello.
There
Okay.
we go.
Good morning or good afternoon, I guess. I'm Hannah. So I'm the president of the Carroll County Foster Parent Association. I also manage Alice's House, and for those of you who don't know, Alice's House is a nonprofit here in Carroll County. Me and my husband live there, and we foster children with exceptionally challenging behaviors and needs. And then the lower part of our home is used as a care closet for children in foster care to get clothing and other items that they might need once they enter care. And then we also are developing sort of like a meeting community space to have things like support groups and counseling for foster families down there as well. So it's a really neat space, and we're really thankful to be living there. I do want to talk this morning just a little bit about the need specifically here in Carroll County for foster families and for just the community in general to step up and recognize the enormous need that there is here right now. There are over 150 kids in care at the moment here in Carroll County, and there are only about 22 licensed foster homes. That means that most children are being placed outside of the county where they are not only disrupted from their families, but also disrupted from their schools, their daycare, their community. It's harder to set up visits. So many times these children end up in places like hotels and defects offices, sleeping in beds with not with strangers, but sleeping with strangers in these places for days or even weeks on end, because there is nowhere to put these children right now. And it is truly a privilege to turn a blind eye to this unless you are actively involved in the foster care system. These are not things that we come across every day. These are not situations that we're going to be innately aware of, because these children are living in hotels and they are, they're in defects offices. But these are some of the most vulnerable members of society, and they're part of our community, and they are quite literally forgotten and unseen. And so the need for foster parents is absolutely enormous and critical right now, because these children are desperate for a roof over their head and the nurturing and care that a family can provide. And all the time, when I share these kinds of things, there are children sleeping in hotels, I get the response of, like, well, what do we do? Like, this is insane. There's children, they're sleeping in hotels, and sharing the solution to that. Oftentimes the response is like, well, that's just really inconvenient for me. It's just not the right time for me. It's too hard. That is, too disruptive to my lifestyle. And the reality of foster care is that it's not convenient. It's never going to be convenient. There's nothing easy about foster care. There's nothing easy about, shifting your entire life around to welcome a child and to enter into the brokenness of a family that is experiencing trauma and brokenness and loss. There's nothing easy about that ever. But the uncomfortableness of our sacrifice is so much less than the loss and the trauma and the heartbreak that these kids and their families are experiencing. And we owe it to them to make those sacrifices and step up and reach out so that we are caring for our children, we're showing them that they're seen, we're giving them healthy futures and healing and the love and care that they so desperately deserve.
Thank you. Jill Richards and her husband Justin fostered for 7 years before closing their home upon finalizing their second adoption. Between their last adoption in 2017 and the fall of 2022, Jill was busy figuring out what being a mom to all 6 kids was all about. She says she still hasn't figured that out, but in September of this past year, she agreed to volunteer with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board's Mission Georgia initiative as a foster care advocate in the Northwest region. In this new role, Jill is seeking to connect foster families with communities of care, being wrapped around care in churches, or begin wrapping around care in churches where they have yet to have been established, connect people and resources, and provide training to community groups and churches on how to relate to kids from traumatic backgrounds. Please welcome Jill Richards.
Thank you. Hannah brought up some really interesting points, very valid points, and she mentioned the word sacrifice a couple times. And recently I heard the phrase voluntary redemptive sacrifice. So if you take a minute to break that apart, you volunteer for the purpose of redemption from brokenness, and it's a sacrifice. Our kids involuntarily had to sacrifice childhood. We can voluntarily sacrifice our comforts, things that are easy for us, things that we have been afforded in the way of blessing that we didn't really deserve, to share with someone who has a lack or who is in a deficit in some way. It's not easy. We've had a pretty tough road ourselves, and not as tough as many situations, but tough enough that we've learned a lot of lessons, and tough enough to know that we've got a lot of lessons left to learn. As a volunteer with Mission Georgia, the Georgia Baptist Mission Board has identified 5 vulnerable populations in the state that they would like to address, one of those being foster care and adoption. They see children in foster care as a vulnerable population, and they are seeking to serve that population and also the people who step up to help them. One of the ways that they do that is by calling on people in different regions of the state who will go and deliver training, who will also make connections with church members, community members, and have people who will come alongside foster parents, because experience tells me that you sometimes feel like you're on an island, and it doesn't have to be that way. There are people in the community who want to help, and I remember speaking at a WMU meeting one time, and a lady who was my high school counselor was in that meeting, and she said, there are people who want to help, they just don't understand what to do. And to me, I guess in the middle of my circumstance and situations, and I had put myself on that island, I didn't really see that. And I felt like I was unloading my burden that I voluntarily signed up for onto someone else who really didn't know what they were getting into. So it was eye-opening to hear her say that to me. And then I learned that I needed to let go of some things and embrace that help. So that's important to also come to that place where you realize it's okay to receive help and look for those who are willing to serve. And thank you for those of you who are in the room, because I think you are part of that group that is willing to serve, and you say that by being here today. Some of the trainings that the Georgia Baptist Mission Board will provide is trust-based relational intervention. They are sponsoring that. We, in our Northwest region, the window for that training opened back in April, I think it was April 14th. It will run through June 30th. I have done one training. I say done. I only facilitated that. It's a video stream. But that we have other opportunities to use that training between now and June. Trust-based relational intervention highlights the fact that children have been abused and they have been broken in interpersonal relationships, and they're only going to heal by safe and nurturing interpersonal relationships. So all of that training comes from that perspective, and it gives practical applications. There were times when, things would hit the fan at home, and we were like, I have an early childhood background. I've used everything I know. I've raised 2 kids already halfway through their childhood. The things that worked with biological children just fell flat. And what do? Well, when you have a trauma-affected, impacted brain, it thinks differently because it's in fight, flight, or freeze mode. They're hypervigilant. The downstairs brain has been overdeveloped. The upstairs brain, where you can reason and think through what your action needs to come next, cause and effect, all of that is underdeveloped because the downstairs brain has kept them alive. So if you can recognize that and see how you can move forward with respecting not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you, and what do I have that I can give you to help you move forward and to move forward successfully. So that's one of the trainings. There are other things. You can go to Georgia Baptist Mission Board. It's actually missiongeorgia.org. I also have some handouts and some contact information if you're interested in that. But again, thank you for hearing us today. Thank you for opening up your heart to listen to the plight of foster children. And I hope you guys will make a decision to get involved.
Ivy Rollins is a full-time biological, adopted, foster, and special needs mom to 5 girls. She celebrates 10 years of marriage this year to her husband, Will. She's a part-time police officer, mental health advocate, and suicide loss support group facilitator. She enjoys being outside, date nights with her husband, cruising in the Caribbean, and reading. She is an active member of the Rooteville Road Baptist Church, where she volunteers in the children's ministry. She's a Carrollton High School alum and earned a bachelor's degree in criminology from the University of West Georgia. She's passionate about advocating for our most vulnerable children, providing all of her children with a loving and safe home, and helping them to be who God calls them to be. Please welcome Ivy Rollins.
Thank you. Thank you. So today I want to just kind of speak a little bit on personal experience in foster care. We have been foster parents for about 5 years and adoptive parents for about 1.5 years. I believe for us it was a true calling that I put off for a long time because we had 3 biological children. We were living this nice little bubble and everything was great, and God had blessed us so much, and we didn't want to be uncomfortable. But eventually we did say yes, and I can tell you it has been the hardest thing that we've ever done, also the biggest blessing. Raising children is truly a privilege, and it's grown us as a family. It's grown my children. People asked us at the beginning, aren't you afraid for your own children? Yeah, I was actually. Am I anymore? No. I think that it's made our children better people. Our biological children better people. I think obviously it makes our foster children better people when we bring them to our home and invest in them. And it's not just about saying yes to being a foster parent. It's about advocating for them. Most people can provide a bed, even a cot sometimes for these children. That is not what foster care is about. Foster care is about making sure that they have everything they need to thrive and understanding where they came from. You heard the lady speak on it already, that these children are not like our biological children with no trauma. They're just not, and we have to understand that. It took us a long time to get any understanding of that, and we continue to try to grow our knowledge in that area of what exactly trauma does to these children, and we have to understand that to be able to help them thrive. We went to the DFAC's office last week to get fingerprinted. And when I went in, the lady said, "Oh, you're here to get fingerprinted. Are you new foster parents?" And I said, "No, it's our 5-year reeval." I said, "Oh, wow. Most people don't make it that far." And I thought, ooh, it got me all. Sorry, I'm very emotional about our children. But it got me, and I thought, what are we doing? Not just, we can recruit foster parents all day long. Obviously, we need more and more, but what can we do to keep them? And I think the biggest answer is that we have to come together. We have to, I'm sure you're all sitting here saying, "Oh, I hear y'all saying all these things," but what do we do? And obviously, you're here because you're interested, or you're live streaming, you're watching us because you want to know what can you do. You do not have to be a foster parent. Obviously, we want you to be. You don't have to do that, though, to help. Our first kids came at midnight, 2 of them. Sometimes we need diapers or toothbrushes, make care bags, give us a date night, where we don't have to. Most sitters are not going to watch my 5 kids. It's hard to find a sitter to watch 5 kids. It's even more difficult to find a sitter when you have a child with behavioral needs that most people don't understand. So, if you are involved in a church and there's someone in your church that's fostering, reach out to them, and don't just ask them, because y'all, we have a really hard time asking or accepting help, asking for or accepting. Just tell us, "Hey, I'm going to come get the kids Friday night. Y'all go out." Those are the kind of things that you can do. When we adopted our youngest daughter, she is now 2.5. She has Down syndrome, and she's perfect, y'all. And we actually said no when we got that call, by the way. I said, "I am not equipped for that. I don't know anything about special needs, and she has a feeding tube, and I don't know how to work that." And I hung up the phone, and I started praying. And she's amazing. And I'm so glad we said yes. So, follow your gut. If you want to be a foster parent, do it. There's never a good time. It's not going to be easy. But I encourage us to just work together. I think we have really open lines of communication in this community, and I'm so thankful for Gradit Communications and everything that our community does for us, and we appreciate all the support. And any of us on this panel, you guys can reach out to us anytime with any questions, and we will certainly tell you how to help. Thank you.
Libby Smith has been employed with Georgia DFAC since January 1994. She started a career in Child Protective Services. She's been a supervisor, administrator, program director, and a county director. She has served in 5 different counties during her career. Her favorite position is county director, where she strives to improve the morale of her staff while positively engaging in the community. Her most challenging and enjoyable experiences with DFACs have come from leading counties who are struggling to increase their outcomes and reputation in the community. She is passionate about helping and encouraging others, and is proud to work for an agency that shares those passions. Libby is married with 2 children. She enjoys traveling and watching her son play soccer. And today is a very significant day. For this Friday, day after tomorrow, after 30 years of service, Libby Smith is retiring. So with that, let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you. And yes, I am retiring at the end of this week, but I will say that in my 30-year career, the crisis and the need for foster homes has never been greater than it is today. It doesn't matter what community you're in, there is a great need. I wanted to kind of share a little bit, backtrack to what brings a child into foster care, because I think that's maybe something that we need to understand, what we're looking for, what's needed for children when they enter into foster care. For a child to enter into foster care, our agency, Department of Family and Children's Services, has to identify a child that is unsafe, currently actively unsafe. That doesn't mean that we can put some safety resources in there, that we can put some help in, that maybe things aren't great, but it's not a situation where the child could be in a life-threatening situation. So for a child to enter into foster care, the circumstances have to be significant, life-threatening. For us to take a child into foster care, we have to get permission from our juvenile court judge. It's not a decision we make lightly. Anytime a case is staffed for a potential removal, the first thing I look at for and ask is, what could we do to prevent this removal? What could be done? Is there a family member? Is there a resource? Is there a community that can support this parent in the care of this child? Understanding that removal from a home, removal from family members, removal from parents is the last thing that a child wants. Children don't ask to come into foster care. Children don't want to be removed from their parents, no matter how bad their circumstances are. It is all that they know. It is all they're familiar with. And it is all they want, to be with their family just like anybody else. I've removed children myself from situations that were absolutely horrific. The child is kicking and screaming and begging not to be removed. So children don't come into foster care grateful for being with a foster home or with foster families. They're not thankful that you've opened your doors to them. They want to be with their family and what is familiar. So understand that when a child is removed, it is a very, very last option for us, for the child, and for the family. So we remove the child, and we instantly start looking for a home for the child. We have done that 15 times in Carroll County this past month. 15 times we have tried to find placement for a child this past month. 1 out of 15 times has a child been placed in Carroll County. The other 14 children are either placed somewhere else, outside of this county, some in metro Atlanta. You talk about a culture shock for a child to go from a Carroll County or a City of Carrollton school to a Fulton County school. You've removed a child from their parents, from everything they know, from their teachers, their friends, and now we're placing them into a completely different environment and expecting them to behave, expecting them to be thankful again. The need for homes in this community is huge. We have currently 5 children who are staying every night in a hotel because throughout the entire state of Georgia, there is not a home or a group home or a facility that is equipped to take care of those children or willing or has space. So every night in this community, we have children that are housed, cared for by a rotating basis of people who are looking after them in a hotel. Again, these children did not ask for this. They did not want this. So the need for homes is huge. We currently in Carroll County, and I write the number down because I want to be completely accurate, as of this morning, as of an hour ago, have 164 children in foster care in Carroll County. I would say, and this is just my estimate, that less than 1/3 of those children are actually placed in Carroll County. What this means is the children have to travel long distances for visits. They have to travel long distances to see their family, and again, are in a completely unfamiliar environment. What can you do? How do you become a foster parent? The first step is visit our statewide webpage, which is fostergeorgia.com. That is where you register. You can also reach out to your county office, and we will definitely put you in touch with the ladies who do recruiting and do certifying of foster parents. It is a process. We don't want just anybody to be a foster parent. Yes, we dig in, we find out backgrounds, because we want to make sure that A, you're ready. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of support, though, both from my agency and also from this community. I will say in the 5 counties I've served, and I will say this proudly for the rest of my days, Carroll County is the most giving, the most serving, the most collaborative county that I have ever worked in. So you will not be alone. You may feel it at times, but there are people that want to help. One time I started a program, and I know my time's running short. One time I started a program, and I had 3 things for foster parent recruiting: be one, recruit one, or love on one. Everybody can do one of those 3 things. Thank you.
Amanda Carden currently serves as the Executive Director of the Carroll County Child Advocacy Center. In addition to her operational and administrative duties as Executive Director, Amanda also serves the center as a credentialed forensic interviewer for children ages 2 to 17. In addition to forensic interviewing, an area of passion for Amanda is outreach and sharing with the West Georgia community the important work happening at the center and the vital role that all adults play in keeping our children safe. Prior to joining the Child Advocacy Center in May 2020, Amanda worked with the Carrollton City School System as a teacher, building level administrator, and district level administrator. She holds both a bachelor's and master's degree in special education and an educational specialist in educational leadership. Amanda enjoys spending time at home with her husband, daughter, and their sweet Labrador retrievers. Please welcome Amanda Carden.
Thank y'all so much. I am such a loud person. A microphone makes me nervous. Maybe that's the hillbilly in me, that I'm pretty naturally loud. I'm the last one speaking, so I think it would be improper if I didn't thank you 4 ladies. And very interesting, and I have some thoughts on that. I wanted to share a little bit with y'all about the Carroll County Child Advocacy Center and what our role is in this. We forensically interview and provide services to children who have been affected by child abuse. Some of those children are in foster care. Some are staying with a relative placement. Some are right at home. It all depends on where things have occurred. We see a lot of kids. As of this week, we've interviewed 150 already. There are actually 2 kids that are in care that are at our center right now from another county that are being interviewed about the things that have led to their placement. These ladies and the work that they do is exceptional. I get to work with Miss Libby a lot, and that's a privilege and it's an honor. I can't tell you anything that these ladies haven't already spoke about. I thank you for being here. Sometimes the work of children is hard. Anyone that's in this room knows that, whether you are in law enforcement with your Department of Family and Children's Services, if you're school, if you're a foster parent, if you're a biological parent, if you're a pastor, if whatever that is, the work of children is the hardest work that will ever be done. But their safety, people often say children deserve to be safe and loved. I call bull on that. That's an inherent something they should have. To deserve something means you do something to deserve it. Do you know what I mean? If I act really good, you should love me. If I act really good, I should have a place to stay. Children deserve love and don't deserve love, and safety should be inherently theirs, and it's the responsibility of adults, period. And sometimes I think conversations about children, I know in our world, when we start talking about the abuse of kids, whether that's physical or sexual or neglect, people's hair catches on fire. Do y'all find that? Those of you that are foster parents, when you talk about the needs of your kids, people's hair catches on fire sometime because it's not easy. You know, when you hear about the process of removal that Miss Libby spoke about, my gosh, there's nothing haphazard about that. What has a child endured that's led to that? Their safety being so compromised. So I know for myself here, just sitting here with these ladies, I feel convicted when you talk about that recruitment you had for foster parents. I think there's a charge, not to everyone in this room, obviously to everyone in this room. We're all here, you know, because we care about kids and we care about them being safe. But what is the charge to everybody who didn't come today? We're talking about children. There is nothing more easy to talk about in the big scheme. There's no one more easy to love. Even when things are maladaptive behaviorally and all of that going on, something has led to that. So what's that charge? Other than clutching pearls and blessing your heart, and I'm going to pray for you, and I love prayer, y'all. I'm a person of faith, but what are we going to do beyond that? If we're in our organizations or our faith-based groups, what are we going to do beyond that other than bless your heart? I wish I could do that. If we're one of those folks that our job is to love on, how do we do that? It has to be intentional. So y'all have inspired me. I completely scrapped what I was going to say, because any of you that speaking is not a problem I have. It is my spiritual gift to talk about things I am passionate about. But our advocacy center, we become involved when something has happened or allegedly happened. And the things that children endure, I tell people, there are things that children endure that Hollywood hasn't thought of yet. And I'm preaching to the choir here. Appreciate that 1 minute, Mr. Engel. So I know for myself, I'm so thankful that you're here. I'm thankful for the work of everyone in this room. But how do we get them out there to join into this? In the hard work, in the dirty work, whether it's becoming a foster parent, recruiting a foster parent, or loving on those that do it, how do we charge them? They're our children. And children belong to all of us. I have a child that I was biologically mine that I was able to have, and I love her more than life itself, but kids belong to all of us. All of us, all children do. No matter where they're from, how they look, how they behave, all of the things, they belong to us. We have a responsibility. Again, everybody in this room is aware of that and feels that. How do we get them out there that didn't come today? Maybe there's a work obligation, maybe there's something else, but just potentially may have chose not to come because it's heavy. How do we inspire them? And because I'm certainly inspired hearing you ladies. I'm very thankful for the privilege to be here and the privilege to be sitting on this stage with y'all and in this room with y'all. Thank you.
Well, the good news is we're on schedule. And the next segment, Colin will be going around with the microphone. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. He'll come around with the microphone. Obviously, you can address it to one panelist or to the whole group. So, said, who wants to kick it
Yeah,
off?
let's start over here on the left. Anybody here have a question? Anything they want to say to the panelists? Who'd have thought? Justin Richards.
Just to get the conversation going, you guys have talked about circles of care. So explain, because Libby, you already said it, be one, recruit one. The one that makes the most sense is love on these foster families. And you guys have talked about that. So I know from GBMB, we've talked about what circles of care are, like the agencies, but could you just kind of talk about that, make that practical for the folks that might be listening?
So what we have found is that there are some really good things going on across the state, but I feel like that they are isolated in pockets. So the hope is that we can make connections. We identified some organizations that have some really good models of what a circle of care looks like. That might be people in different community groups or churches who have decided that I'm really good at cooking, and I've got this set of ladies who they are too old to care for children in their home. Maybe they don't feel confident doing that one-on-one, but they are super good cooks and they love people. So they're going to make meals, and they're going to make sure the people in their community group or their circle has a meal once a week, twice a week. Or maybe we have people who want to provide respite, but as Ivy mentioned a minute ago, it's hard to take on 5 kids, especially one with special needs. So maybe you have people in your community that would like to come to a training to learn how to care for a kid who has trauma in their background or who has special behavioral needs. So we have access to that training. We can come in the Northwest Georgia area, in churches right here in Carroll County, in civic groups, community groups. We can come out and provide as little as an hour and a half of training just to get a quick overview, or we can do that for youth ministries, church ministries. We can also provide the training to help someone become a confident caregiver, a trauma-informed caregiver. So those are things that we can do to help support others and help the people who are becoming caregivers or support people for foster families to feel confident in being able to care for children as respite or babysitters or give those date nights. Just trying to think other ways that you could help a foster family. Laundry sometimes is a thing. I had said this as a foster parent. Sometimes I really kind of like to do my own laundry. But if I had somebody that would like to come and sit down in my home and read to my babies while I go and do the laundry, that would mean so much to the children. They learn that there's a trusted adult outside of mom and dad, and they love me, and they're going to look in my eyes and tell me that I'm precious by spending time with me. If you could be that type of person and come alongside a foster family, go in and please understand when somebody has multiple children in their home, that the home is not always going to be immaculate. Look past the crumbs, get on the floor and read with the kids. It's just the nature of it. So just, getting in the work, the hard work with those families, and letting the kids see that there's someone that is supporting their foster parents, because that shows them that they're precious, but also it helps the foster families as well to know that they're important and that they're not alone. I think I just took a whole other 5 minutes.
We do have in Carroll County, which is, we're very fortunate to have a service called Care Portal. Careportal.org is basically it's a website. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. My staff put in needs in there, needs for both birth families, foster children. And there are 10 churches in Carroll County that are part of Care Portal. They're Care Portal churches. And basically, if my case manager puts in a request, this child needs a book bag, that gets put in, and then that goes out to all the church point people, and those point people then can send that to all the people who have agreed to be a Care Portal resource, and someone says, I'll buy that book bag. Sometimes it's as little as a book bag. Sometimes it's as much as sponsoring a child on a school trip. Sometimes it may be a lot of times it's buying beds. But that's supporting both children in foster care and children who are with their parents. The ideal way is for that person who is sponsoring that need to then deliver that need to the family. What that then does is gives that family an opportunity to see somebody in the community cares, and hopefully link them to a faith community so they can become part of a church and feel that support, because so many of our families are just isolated with no positive people to provide help. Something I share a lot of times is one flat tire can derail a whole family and bring children in foster care. If I were to break down with a flat tire on the side of the road, I've probably got 20 people I can call who would come and help. Who would pay for the tire if I didn't have the money right then to pay for the tire? Our families don't have one person that they could call. That means they lose their job, they lose their house, and the children are homeless. A flat tire can lead to foster care.
I have one more thing I want to say about that too. I think I put my business card on most of the tables. If you see it, there's a website there. On that website, that is our Carroll County Foster Parent Association website, and there is a list of nonprofits and churches here in Carroll County that serve children and families who are experiencing foster care. They're foster friendly or different things like that. So if you are either looking for a church community that has a foster care ministry, or you're looking for a nonprofit or a way to serve foster families, there's a whole list on that website. They are always looking for volunteers. And so, there's ways to contact them. So definitely check that out if that is something you're interested in as well.
Now, each of you have mentioned that it's a serious deal in every county in the state of Georgia. Is there recent legislation or incentives that you're aware of that makes it more attractive for people to want to be foster parents, or is there anything that you've discussed recently with anybody that you thought, hey, if we had this or were able to do something like this, it would make it more attractive? Whether it's just a simple incentive or if it would have to go through state legislators. And if you do have to go through state legislators, don't you want everybody to call them and harass them today?
So every year, I will say, because this is being live streamed now, that state legislators do look at the needs of foster parents and foster children. They have increased the per diem over the last several years. They have also increased the rights of foster parents and increased the ability and the standing of foster parents in juvenile court. In juvenile court, foster parents are always asked to be present when a child in their home has court. Their opinion is valid and appreciated by the court and considered. So yes, as far as legislation, every year there are new bills that affect foster parents. And I will say that through the past several years, there's been some pretty significant changes, some pretty large increases as it comes to per diem, and also the rights of foster parents throughout the process, all the way through adoption.
I would say for our, both of our adoptions were considered special needs. So a lot of times, a barrier, I would say, for people who are considering adoption is the cost. Most of the time, that would be if you're looking for like a private adoption or international adoption. That's where you get a lot of cost involved. For us, our special needs criteria was it was a little boy who is not considered highly adoptable because of factors about his biology. I'll put it that way. So, and the time in care that he had been in care. So he was considered a special needs adoption. So also our second adoption was a sibling group of 3, and because it's hard to place multiple children, and time in care, they were considered special needs. And so our adoption fee was waived. So that might dispel a little bit of myth about the cost of adoption in regards to certain populations.
Again, just kind of on a personal note, we also adopted a child with special needs, and we did not pay a dime out of pocket. She also had a higher per diem. There's something called adoption assistance. I always tell people, do not come into foster care if your sole purpose is to adopt, because you will get your heart broken. They will go home to homes that you don't want them to go home to, because those are their biological families. And if you're coming into foster care to solely adopt, that's a scary place to be, in my opinion. But it more than likely will happen at some point if you foster long enough that you will have that option to adopt a child that's in your home. But again, we get a per diem. We're very thankful that our legislators have increased that recently, but you're not going to get rich on it, okay? It's going to raise the kids on the bare minimum, but it's going to give them food. We get a little extra money to provide them with clothing every year. I think in Carroll County, you get I think right now it's like $15 a month for personal care needs, cosmetics, shampoos, things like that, on top of your regular per diem. But people are constantly fighting for us. I think our DFACs and legislators, they're constantly fighting so that we can continue to financially take care of these children. And right now, I think they're doing a pretty good job. The per diem that we receive for our current foster daughter certainly takes care of her needs. But again, I think the biggest need for us that I see as foster parents is supporting foster parents. And I loved, Amanda said we don't need the bless your heart, clutch your pearls. I've never heard that. That was amazing. Yes, it was. And I hear that all the time. Or I could never do that. Why? Or I could never give a child up. I could never give them back. It would break my heart. Well, you know what? They need somebody's heart broken besides their own for once. You are the adult. They are the child. It is your job to have your heart broken, not theirs. Give them a chance. We just said yes to a teenager about 2 months ago. I was terrified, y'all. Hannah can speak on the teenager myth. I was, but I felt like God had truly called us at this point in our journey to say yes, and we did, and what a blessing. Now, she's tough, but what a blessing. Don't listen to all the myths. Just say yes if you feel called, and if you don't feel called to actually foster, there's so many things you can do. We've given you some great resources up here.
All right, I'm on the right side of the room. Anybody else on this side have a question that I can throw up before I go to the left side? Ivy, you said something earlier that struck me, that you went to get fingerprinted, and they said most people don't make it, to 5 years. I mean, I just couldn't help but think about a kid having to go through that twice, going through to a new family, and then they're going to go to another new family.
We've never had a child in our home that we were their first placement. Besides the one we adopted, because we've gotten her from birth. And we have gotten quite a few from NICU, but that's because they were newborn. We've never had a child that was not a newborn that we were their first placement.
And I guess the 5 years, I mean, I guess the point is to think that less than 5 years, you guys hope that the kid will go back to their original parents,
Sure.
right? I mean, that's what the goal is, that we're hoping that they'll be, that issue will be fixed.
The goal-
Does it not, what was the percentage of that happening? I mean, are you guys aware of?
Oh gosh. I don't know. We've had a couple of children in our home that their parents have died while they were in care. We've had to say no to a couple adoptions. We did not feel like it was a fit for our family, and you know, they stayed with us until we found the right home for them, a forever home. You know, that's a hard question to answer. I think when you spoke on you know, most foster homes not making it to 5 years, I think COVID was really difficult for foster families, and I
For
can't
normal
speak on
families too.
this.
I mean, for
Yes. You know, we need, I know I need, even when I have a child in care, I need a little break sometimes. They have really major needs, and we're all humans. And when his daycare shut down, it was probably the hardest time of my life in foster. That was very difficult, and I can't imagine that we didn't lose some foster parents during that, because there were several times that I said, we can't do this anymore, and I started calling people, and they were like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You know, so, but we need support. It truly takes a village.
Well, obviously, the foster parents, I think they do it for the right reasons. I mean, I've talked to you several times, Ivy. I believe you do it for the right reasons. But, I mean, do you mind sharing? I mean, getting a pat on the back doesn't hurt. You know, if these kids, if they're 18 years old and they're adults and they're out on their own, I mean, do you guys have stories of them reaching back out to say, you know, thank you? I mean,
We've only been in it for, you know, 5 years, not even 5 yet, but we don't have aged out. I think someone spoke on it. They're not happy to come into our home. They don't thank us. They don't understand the concept of we're keeping them safe. Do I think when they get older and realize that we did, you know, that we were there to keep them safe? Sure. You know, I think that there's plenty of times that they are thankful for that. But no, the night they show up at our home, they're usually not happy to be there. And they blame mostly DFACs for taking them when, you know, it was they were taken to keep them safe. And so we really try to speak highly of DFACs also, because these children are still dealing with their caseworkers who they a lot of times don't like at first. They're angry. And they're angry at us a lot of times. But we just try to tell them, you know, they you know, you got removed so that you could stay safe. Sure.
I just wanted, I'm going to take over a question from you, Mr. Collin. I have a question for y'all, particularly those of you that have, as someone sitting down here on the end who's listened, and when we're talking about that, be a foster parent, recruit one, or love on them, and you're talking about we need support, we need love. So for the folks watching that aren't in this room, like if they're leaving out of this room today, or if I'm watching at home, and I make a commitment, I'm going to take an action step to support these ladies, 4 ladies up here are saying these families need support. And sounds like a break sometime. So I'm thinking in my head, what's something great I can do leaving here today? What would you tell me would be the most important thing that I or anyone could do to provide that best support?
I'm just going to give like a couple of examples of things that people did for us that were really helpful, because I think that's one of the easiest to answer the question. On a larger scale, recently had a kind of small church reach out to me. They somehow found out I was the president of the Foster Parent Association, and they said, hey, once a quarter we want to do a parents' night out for foster parents. We want to keep your kids. We want to let you guys go out for a few hours just let's set it up. And so they do that once a quarter now, and like they're just not a big church, and like I like had never heard of them before they reached out and started doing that, but they're amazing. And that's just like a really like simple, like practical way to do something. And if that's something that you think that you'd be interested in, then you have my card right there. But like even like events, like, oh, we would love to host like a back to school bash, a Christmas party, things like that. On a more personal level, I recently had a friend from church come to me and say, like, hey, we want to babysit for you. We know you have a lot of kids and they have a lot of needs. Just tell me what days you're available and how many sitters you think you need. And so that like absolutely floored me, because all of these, all of any foster parent you talk to is going to say that finding childcare is one of the most challenging parts of being a foster parent. And so having someone reach out to me and say, just tell me what you need, was so easy, and so special. And so you don't have to do anything fancy. It doesn't have to be big and grand. It can be really small, like, let me watch your kids. And I'll share one more thing that was really, really special that I had a friend do a few years ago. We had a friend who was really into sports, we had a child who was really into sports, and me and my husband are like not sporty people at all. And so like that's just not what we did. We didn't go to like sports games or anything, but the friend of mine was really into sports, and so she took our foster daughter to sports games with her. She had a child that was close to her age. And like her daughter and our foster daughter became friends. And that was so, so special too. One thing that I've noticed, and I have mostly older kids, and so they're able to verbalize this, is that so many of our foster children feel very ostracized. Even if their friends or their teachers don't know that they're in care, they do feel very ostracized naturally because of their status. And so to have reach out and say, like, let me take your kids on a play date with my kids and like intentionally like make effort to form relationships is so, so special. So I don't know, it's not always about the nonprofits and it's not always about the programs, and all obviously like those exist and they're amazing and they're there for a reason, but like just getting to know a foster parent on a personal level and serving them in just really simple ways can be enormously effective and like so like, I mean, we're just so grateful for that as well.
Mr. Graddick, sir, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, if we can make it about a 2-minute question.
All right, anybody looking for one more question? Somebody's got to have a question. Like, who wants to start the nonprofit that's going to come over and babysit and take kids to the ball games and things?
Is there a plan for your replacement, Miss Libby, that you can share?
Yes, there is a great replacement. Courtney McElroy will be the new DFACS director. She has been with Carroll County for about 6 years, and before that she worked with me in Harrelson, so she's got over 20 years of experience and she will be amazing. So I'm very proud to leave the agency in very, very, very capable hands.
We'd like to thank our sponsors, Sheriff Terry Langley, Hightower Family Funeral Homes, Green Court, State Senator Mike Dugan, Tanner Health System. We'd also like to thank the city station for their hospitality today, and very helpful. Please make note that in November, put it on your calendar, November 4th, there'll be a West Georgia Regional Foster Care and Adoption Summit at Tabernacle Baptist Church. You can find out more about that on Facebook. We, of course, thank you for coming, but most of all, We'd like to thank our panelists, Ivy Rollins, Jill Richards, Hannah Rodriguez, Libby Smith, and Amanda Carden. Please give them a wonderful round of applause and have a great afternoon.